Welcome back, friends. This is the busiest week of 11th edition so far, which means more players, more data, and more to go through. I got it all ready to go, so sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Couple things before we get started. I want a huge shout out to one of my Patreon members, John Anderson. He helped me actually automate a lot of the data collection. I know I've been sort of mentioning that, and you guys have said, well, hey, reach out to some people. Well, he reached out to me. He offered his help, and he's been a great help, and it let me actually get things done a lot quicker. And he actually helped me get some of the disposition versus disposition numbers. So I actually have a disposition matchup matrix for the week. I'm going to hopefully keep doing this every week, and we'll eventually get a running total for the data set for the edition, etc., etc. But it's a great edition, and you guys have been asking me for this or for something like this for a long time. So eternally grateful to John for his time and effort, and hopefully you guys can give him a big shout out too, because it made my life easier and like gives me more time to do more stuff here, and it gave me more data for you guys, which is what you guys always are asking for. And of course, one last thing before we get started. If you like the video, please hit that like button. Ever since 11th edition drops, the videos have been getting more and more traction. People are more and more excited for 40k. And, your guys' support really shows, really helps push it out there, really gets more eyeballs on it, and gets more people into our community, which is great to see. If you really like it, don't forget to subscribe to make sure you get my latest videos. And if you're looking for other ways to help support me, you can check my Patreon, patreon.com/warpfriends, link in the description below. All right, guys, let's get going. So as usual, first up is the player number. So last week we had 695 players, bringing the Dataslate total up to 1,189. 3,347 games played, bringing the Dataslate total up to 5,763. And we had 12 tournaments, bringing the Dataslate total up to 26. So same as last week, here's the top 3 results from each of the tournaments that we gathered data from this week. Down the bottom has a total count of all of the dispositions in the top 5s for all the tournaments as well, just so you can get a good idea of which dispositions are placing most often within the top 5. I'm not going to go through the list here, but feel free to pause, take a look, and see how every tournament kind of panned out there in the top 3. So one thing I will mention before we move on is the Birmingham Super Major. It had like 300 players. It was the biggest tournament by far for the week, and it was the first Super Major of 11th edition. So just a note there. I actually do have something new on the next slide regarding the Birmingham Super Major. So this is something you guys have been asking for a while, lists, and it's one of the things that was most selected in the Patreon poll I put out, which is, what you guys like added to the videos. What I'm going to do is to start out, let me know how you guys like it, and I can always adjust it moving forward, but I'm going to give you the top 3 players list. So first, second, and third players list. First up is a winning list from the Thousand Suns player. He played Hexwork Thrallband and the Sekitar cohort with priority assets. Now, I'm not going to go through every list individually because I'm not a faction expert on every single faction, so I don't want to just be I don't want to be giving out false information or acting like I know what I'm talking about for there. So I'll let you guys take a look at it, and I'll sort of move on to the next slide. But if you guys want to pause and take a closer look, be my guest. Second place was Chaos Space Marines. Their detachment was Soulforge Warpack, but they didn't have a 1-point detachment listed, so I only have Soulforge Warpack for them. I'm sure they played another one, but they didn't have it listed, so this is all I can go by. And they play Purge the Foe. Again, I'm just going to let you guys take a look at this if you want. You can kind of see what they brought and everything like that. And we're going to move on to the third place list. So coming in third place was Tyranids Subterranean Assault, which is 3 points, and they played Disruption. And I'm not going to get into any of the specifics on this because you guys probably know better than I do when it comes to specific armies lists and everything like that. But take a look, see what he brought, and when you're ready, you can join us on the next slide. All right, first up is the win percentage by armies for the previous week. So Games Workshop acceptable win rate is 45 to 55%. Anything within that range will be in green. Anything 5% above or below will be in orange. Anything above or below that will be in red. So coming in number 1 last week, we had Imperial Agents with 80% win rate. Thousand Suns with 58.3. Chaos Demons 55.8, Tau 55.6, and Space Marines with 55. And at the bottom, we had Knights with 30, Ashmel Tarn with 30.9, Genestealers with 32.6, Black Templars with 33.3, and Sisters with 35.4. So we actually had a much larger sample size this week, about twice as much as the previous 2 weeks combined, which gives us a little bit of a tighter data set. It's still not, in the grand scheme of things, it was still a pretty light week overall. We do have a little bit closer to balance, a lot less armies over the 60. We still have quite a few armies under 40, which is a little bit concerning, but it's only 3 weeks in, and there's still a lot to figure out. And, some armies are just going to need some help. We've seen Ashmel Tarn and Chaos Knights down there every single week, so they could just be armies that really need some help. Imperial Agents, they killed it this week, 80%. There was only one player, so it is what it is with Agents, but that one Agents player rocked it. I know we do have quite a few Agents players actually who sort of, stop by in the comments and everything like that. So if it was one of you guys, kudos, let us know how it went. Thousand Suns and Chaos Demons still doing really good. Tau is actually back up where I would expect him to be based on all their other results. They had a little bit of a down week last week with win percentage wise, but they still won most of the tournaments and everything like that. So this is roughly where I expected them to be. Hopefully, as the data slate rolls on, we might get a few weeks with 900 to 1,000 players in it, and that will give us a much tighter sample. But what I'm really looking forward to is the data slate breaking over the 10K mark for games played, 10-15K mark. I mean, that's not that far off, but that should give us a much better view of how things are actually shaping up. It's still early stages and everyone's still kind of running around trying to figure everything out. So, it's going to be up and down week over week for now. All right, next up is Army representation. So this is a percentage of players who play each army. If everyone played every army equally, about 3.6, 3.7%. So that gives you a good idea of sort of how many players are playing each army. So coming in number 1, Necrons with 7.8, Tyranids and Space Marines both with 6.3. Then we had Tau 5.6, and then we had Knights and Custodians at 5.5. And at the bottom we had Agents at 0.1, Death Watch at 0.9, Black Templars at 1.3, and then Genestealers and Blood Angels both at 1.4. So Necrons took over top spot. Space Marines dropped down quite a bit. They were upwards 8% last week, or over almost 9%, I think. I can't quite remember, but they did take quite a bit of a hit, a couple percentage points, and Necrons jumped up there. Tau is just right behind there at 5.6. Not surprising. They're performing pretty well overall. All the armies that are doing good are up near the top, which is not too much of a surprise. And some of the old reliable armies that are usually pretty popular, like Guard, they're down to 2.4%, which is quite low. I mean, they are performing very poorly, so it's not that surprising, but it's been a while since we've seen Guard down that low. They're usually one of, at least in the middle of the pack, just due to the popularity. The army rep chart always looks this way. There's 3 or 4 armies eating up a majority of the players, and there's 4 or 5 armies who have, barely anybody, and then everyone else kind of falls somewhere in the middle there. All right, moving on is the combined stats for the previous week. So win rates, XOX1 percentage, and representation. So XOX1 percentage of players who went undefeated or only 1 loss at a tournament, so 5-0 or 4-1. It's not a perfect stat, but it's a good way when you compare it to win rate to see how well an army's doing. The higher the XOX1, the more likely to see those armies at the top tables. So Agents come in number 1 this week due to their insane 80% and 100% because there's only 1 player and he went 4-1. Then we had Tau, Thousand Suns, Space Marines, and Demons. And at the bottom we had Chaos Knights, Ash Miltarm, Genestealers, Black Templars, and Sisters. Was going to exclude Agents just because it makes the chart look really silly, but I thought, it's just the weekly data. It is what it is kind of thing, and it was kind of just funny to see, give Agents their time to shine. They don't normally do very well at all, so it's always fun when they're up at the top. But overall, actually, regarding XOX1, the highest was Tau at 20.5, which is actually pretty reasonable for the top army. On those big weeks when you have a few really large tournaments that go 7-8 rounds, the XOX1 tends to be a little bit lower on average. But overall, it wasn't too bad. There's still tons of armies who really struggled this week. Space Wolves, Blood Angels, Sisters, Templars, Genestealers, Ash Miltarm, and Knights all had 0%. They had basically no players who performed well at all. I mean, all their win rates are down below 45%, and their rep is fairly low, except for Space Wolves. It's actually a little bit above the average. It's definitely shaping up to be a little, not super imbalanced with there's not an army who's up around 40% XOX1, but there's a lot of armies down around 7 to 8 or even 0% still. It's skewing top heavy from what I've seen so far, but not where we were at the end of 10th where Chaos Space Marines were just running away with it every single week. There's 5 to 6 armies who are doing very, very well, and then there's 5 to 6 who are doing very, very poorly. Next up is the disposition results from the previous week. So again, I color coordinated these. So the dark color is the win rate and the light color is the representation for each disposition. So this week actually came in a little bit more balanced. Purge FO actually lost some players down around 35% instead of being up around 45%. So that's good to see. A little bit of a distribution of the players out of Purge. You don't want one disposition taking up almost half the player base. So it looks like Priority and Take and Hold picked up some of those players. Disruption and Reconnaissance remain around the same 8 to 12% roughly. And the win rates are all pretty good, right around 48 to 50%. Disruption is the only one down around 43. You will notice with some of the win rates for the dispositions this week, it's not quite at 50%. That doesn't quite add up when you're looking at it. You're like, how can no one be over 50? It's because some people don't list the disposition in their army list, so I have to sort of take that down without including them, or they weren't they didn't specify which one they were using, so you just have to list it as none. So those don't get added into the results. So until Games Workshop and Best Coast Pairing and everything kind of get that sorted out and make it mandatory that players submit that data, it's always going to be probably a little bit lower. There's going to be results missing from the disposition data versus the overall data, so it's kind of dropping the numbers down just a little bit. So this is something I mentioned early on. This was the disposition matchup matrix. So this shows every disposition's performance against every other disposition. And I highlighted in the middle there, the mirror matchups are light versions of their colors. Now you will notice again that it's not exactly 50% like it should be, because some players don't have the disposition listed. So if both players are playing Purge, but one person doesn't list it, then Purge is getting a win or a loss, and the other army's not getting credit for that. So it's kind of throwing the numbers off a little bit. So until it's mandatory, or until I can reliably be sure about every player's disposition numbers, they're not going to be exactly 50%. So you can see, like, Take and Hold, they perform very good against Purge, 53% win rate. They perform poorly against Priority, only 45%. Purge actually did good against Disruption, and then kind of average to below average against everything else. Disruption actually did very good against Reconnaissance, 51%, and Reconnaissance was really strong, over 50% against Purge. That was their best results. So Priority performed very, very well against Disruption, almost a 60% win rate, and against Reconnaissance, 53%. It performed its worst against Purge, and then just average against Take and Hold. So overall, Priority's performing pretty well. Again, it is not quite perfect, and I will start rolling this over week, and as we get more weeks and we sort of add this to the overall Dataslate numbers, it should start to look a little bit more balanced. But like I said, until they can kind of sort out and make sure everyone lists their disposition properly, the numbers aren't going to be quite even as they should be. So let me know what you guys think. I know you've been asking for something like this. Let me know if there's any improvements you'd like to make, anything like that. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and I'm hoping you guys enjoy it. So next up is the disposition player numbers for each army. So taking a look here, Necrons for the previous week there, Take and Hold really sort of took hold of Necrons and was almost half their player base. And same as Tyranids, a lot of the players were Take and Hold, and then they actually had quite a good contingent of Disruption players. So only one Purge for Tyranids, which is kind of surprising because you would think Tyranids are the just eat everything army, but they seem to skew heavily into the other dispositions there. Space Marine still has a pretty good spread. Tau is still mainly Purge, but they did have quite a few Reconnaissance this week, which is good to see. Knights and Custodians are still heavy Purge, and some armies are always just going to be heavy into certain ones, like World Eaters, Emperor's Children, Knights, Custodians. They have a lot of Purge options, so they're just going to be heavy into Purge, whereas like Drukhari and Aeldari and stuff like that, they're going to be more heavy into Reconnaissance and Disruption and Take and Hold and stuff like that. Next up is the Tournament 3 disposition last week. So Take and Hold 1-4, Priority 1-4, Purge 1-2, Reconnaissance 1-1, and Disruption 1-1. So it's nice to see all 5 dispositions getting a win, but clearly Priority and Take and Hold are performing the best so far. With Purge has 2, but I feel like that's just a pure numbers game. They just have so many people playing it that they're probably going to pick up a few wins here and there. Kudos to the Disruption player. I believe that was a Dark Angels player who picked up a win. I think that was their first win of 11th so far. All right, next up is the tournaments for each army last week. So Tau 1-3, Necrons 1-2, Thousand Suns, Space Marines, Orcs, Emperor's Children, Death Guard, Dark Angels, and Demons all 1-1. So Tau continues winning a bunch, picked up another 3 wins this week. Necrons, not surprising, they performed very well. They got 2. It is nice to see Dark Angels get a win. They have been struggling quite a bit, and I know I get a lot of Dark Angels players in the comments who are pretty down right now. So, I mean, they did get a win. It was with Disruption, so I don't know what exactly is going on there. I can find the list for those Dark Angels players. If you guys want the list, let me know in the comments. I can find it and paste it in there for you. So overall, it was a pretty good spread this week. We actually had 12 tournaments, so it's a nice, good data set, and we didn't just have 1 or 2 armies winning all of them, which is nice to see. So moving on to the win percentage by armies for the data slate. So again, Games Workshop acceptable win rate is 45 to 55%. Anything within that range is green. Anything 5% above or below will be in orange. Anything above or below that will be in red. So coming in number 1 so far for the data slate, Thousand Suns at 58.3, Chaos Demons at 56.4, Orcs at 55.3, Emperor's Children at 53.9, and Grey Knights at 52.9. And at the bottom, we have Knights at 31.2, Ashramel Tarm at 34.1, Black Templars at 41.1, Genestealers at 41.8, and Sisters at 42.4. So we finally got over that like 1,000 player mark, and it's starting to get up into over the 5,000 games played, and it's getting to be a little bit of a healthier data set here. We still have some outliers at the top. Orcs, Chaos Demons, and Thousand Suns are both all above 55%. Orcs are just barely, but they're up there. Thousand Suns is clearly doing the best, just below the 60% mark there. The real issue is down at the bottom. We have 3 armies down around 42, 41%, and then we have 2 armies down around 30%. Ashmel, Tarman, and Chaos Knights are struggling right now, and hopefully something can be done, but it seems to be week over week with them. So if there's any Chaos Knights or Guard players out there, let me know in the comments what's going on, what can be done to fix this, because clearly, we have a decent enough amount of results now that they should be at least better than 30%. All right, next up is the army representation for the current data slate. So again, percentage of players who play each army, average about 3.6, 3.7% if everyone was playing everyone equally. So you get a good idea of how many players are playing each army. So coming in number 1, Necrons at 7.9, Space Marines at 7.6, Tyranids at 6.8, and Tau at 6.4, and then Custodians at 5.5. Down the bottom, of Agents at 0.3, Deathwatch at 0.7, Gene Stealers at 1.4, Black Templars at 1.5, and Chaos Knights at 1.9. So Necrons, they take over the top spot from Space Marines after a strong week. Both of them are pretty much running away with the overall numbers there, which is not too surprising. Necrons have just seemed to have been a very good army since at least maybe halfway through 9th, as much as I can remember. So it's been 4 or 5 years of Necrons really just doing pretty good. So that's not surprising to see them up there. And Space Marines are always popular. Tyranids and Tau are both doing really well. So again, not surprising to see them up there either. And other than that, there's a decent amount of green on here. Blood Angels, Aeldari, Sisters, Admech, all around 2.3, which is actually pretty healthy for some of those armies like Admech. It's a little low for Aeldari and Blood Angels. They're usually a little bit higher than that, but they haven't been getting great results. So I guess it's not too surprising to see them down there. But Black Templars, Gene Stealers, Deathwatch Agents, they're all usually down at the bottom. So overall, this is kind of what it always looks like and kind of what you would expect it to look like. All right, next up is the combined stats for Dataslate. So army win rates, XOX1 percentage, and representation. Quick reminder again, XOX1 percentage of players who went undefeated or only 1 loss. So as an example, 5-0 or 4-1. It's not perfect, but if you combine it with win rate, you can get a good idea of how strong an army is doing. The higher the XOX1, the more likely to see those armies at the top tables. So after 3 weeks of data here, we started to get some actual semblance of balance and data. Things are starting to level out a little bit. We're going to need probably 2 or 3 more weeks before we get a good solid picture, but it's a lot better than it has been. Coming in number 1 for the data slate so far, Thousand Suns, then Orcs, Agents, just because of the crazy week they had this week, and then Space Marines and Demons, and at the bottom we have Chaos Knights, Ashmel Tarim, Space Wolves, Templars, and Gene Stealers. So we only have 2 armies that are really doing, we have 3 armies right now who are doing really, really well with XOX1. Thousand Suns and Orcs are both around 24.5%. We also have Deathwatch at 25, but the difference is Deathwatch has 0.7% of the representation, whereas Thousand Suns and Orcs are both over 4%. Thousand Suns are almost 5%, so a little bit more sustained success between those 2 armies at the top. So you can take a little bit more that they're probably pretty good if you have that high of rep and that high of numbers after this much data. Down the bottom, we still actually have 2 armies, Space Wolves and Knights, who have yet to go undefeated, or only 1 loss at a tournament. So I feel bad for the Knights and Space Wolves players. It feels like they've been just kicked around and they've never really got their moment. It's been a while since they've been good, and the start of 11th did not do them any favors so far. As the data comes in, we're getting more and more armies closer to the at least 13 to 14%. You like to ideally see everyone around 15-16, but until some of this stuff gets smoothed out a little bit, right now we're looking at still pretty top heavy and quite a few armies at the bottom who are struggling. Hopefully after a few more weeks, some of the Space Wolves and Chaos Knight players can sort of turn it around a little bit and get some better results, but the way things are going, it's not looking too good, unfortunately. All right, next up is the disposition results for the current data slate. So again, 3 weeks of data here. The disposition win rate is in the dark colors, and the lighter version of the color is the disposition representation. So Percival had a slower week this week players-wise, down to 35%, and it did drag them for the data slate so far just under 40, which is good to see. Taking hold is up to 23.5. We have priority assets at almost 17, and we have disruption at 9 and reconnaissance at 12%. And the win percentage is all pretty balanced. Disruption is the lowest at 45, and taking hold's the highest at 50.7. But overall, purge, priority, and disruption, and even reconnaissance are all hovering around that like 48% mark. So it's actually fairly balanced results. across the dispositions. Just the play numbers are still a little imbalanced. I think people will keep bleeding out of Purge as the weeks go on, but I still think it'll always be the most popular, but I think it'll drop down a little bit, and then we can kind of start to see a little bit more overall balance. And it's nice to see that these numbers are much more balanced compared to how sort of imbalanced the individual armies are. All right, next up is the disposition player numbers for each army for the Dataslate. So again, 3 weeks of data here. So starting to see a little bit more blue creep on there. Disruption was definitely the lowest played starting out, and it still is, but we're starting to see a few more armies play it. Space Marines have 7 players, Tyranids 21, Chaos Space Marines 14, Granite Knights, Drukhari, Aeldari, they all have a decent amount of players. Taking Hold is definitely the disposition of choice for several armies. Necrons, Tyranids, Thousand Suns, Orcs, Demons. Overall, priority assets isn't the main disposition for too many armies. It's close to it with Space Marines, 26 versus 29 with Purge, but it seems to be like the second or third most picked option for most armies, leading to a pretty high play rate overall. All right, next up is the tournament wins for each disposition for the Dataslate. So priority assets so far has 8, Purge has 8, Taken Hold has 7, Reconnaissance has 2, and Disruption has 1. Basically a 3-way tie for first place, which is good to see. Despite certain armies having a lot more wins than others, the wins are spread across at least 3 of the 5 dispositions, which is fairly good balance overall. Disruptions, I don't think ever going to get too high up just due to the lack of players, but Reconnaissance, I think in the coming weeks could see a few more wins here and there as people get a little bit more familiar with it. It's nice to see that like it's not just Purge or priority just sort of dominating, that there is more choices out there that can lead you to a tournament win, or at least to have some success. And now we have the army tournament wins for each army for the Dataslate. So it's broken down week over week. So each week is represented by different colors. So it gives you an idea of when each army picked up their win. So Tau has 7 wins. So basically 3 this week and 4 the week before. Necrons has 3. We have Tyranids, Thousand Suns, Space Marines, and Votan with 2. Then we have Sisters, Orcs, Emperors, Children, Death Guard, Dark Angels, Demons, Admech, and Custodes all with 1. So a whole bunch of armies without wins, but we're only 26 tournaments into the Dataslate. It's only 3 weeks. It is the summer, so I think there's still less players than normal just because, summer plans, vacations, all that stuff. As 11th rolls along, we should hopefully see this fill out a little bit better. Hopefully, Tau can slow down a little bit, but they are definitely very strong right now. And that is it for this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching. A huge shout out to my Patreon members. Meet the Great, John Gurman, Asa Devile, Staic, Eric Jackson, Rob Biel, Ivatal, Danny Santos, John Anderson, and my newest Patreon, the man they call Mike. Thank you guys so much for your support, and of course my YouTube channel members. It's not something you have to do, but it's something you choose to do, and it means the world to me. If you want to join these fine folks, you can check out my Patreon, patreon.com/warfriends, link in the description below. Let me know what you guys think so far of the new slides, the tournament lists, if you want them sort of sorted or listed out or presented in an easier to read way or a different way, let me know. And the matchup matrix, and hopefully in the next couple weeks I'll have the Dataslate matchup matrix as well. Good luck in the tournaments coming up next weekend, guys, and I'll see you next week.